The huge space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities and had been built as a meeting place for different alien races. Today, the station buzzed with activity as ships from 12 different worlds arrived for the most important military meeting in galactic history. Commander Jake Morrison walked through the long metal corridors of the station. His boots made soft sounds on the polished floor. Behind him walked Lieutenant Amy Carter and Sergeant Pete Collins. All three wore the blue uniforms of Earth's military. Jake carried a small data pad with information about human military forces. The pad seemed tiny compared to the massive computers that other aliens brought to these meetings. Jake stopped at a large window that showed the emptiness of space. In the distance, he could see the warships of different alien races. The Krillian ships looked like huge metal spears. The Zephyrian vessels had strange curves and seemed to move like living things. The Saurian fleet was made of thick, heavy ships that looked like they could ram through anything. "Sir, the meeting starts in 10 minutes, Amy said. She was young, but smart, and Jake trusted her to handle the political side of things. Pete was older and had fought in many battles on Earth. His job was to understand military tactics and help Jake make good decisions. "I know they don't think much of us," Jake said quietly. "But we're here to help stop the Vex swarm. That's what matters." The three humans walked into the main meeting room. It was enormous, with a round table that could seat over 100 beings. The ceiling was high and made of clear material that showed the stars outside. Around the table sat representatives from the different alien races, and each group looked very different from the others. The Krillians were tall, about 9 feet high, with 4 arms and skin that looked like metal. They had been warriors for thousands of years and were proud of their strength. Their leader, General Vexthek, sat straight in his chair and looked at the humans with cold eyes. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects. They had 6 legs and wings that moved slowly even when they weren't flying. Their leader, called Hive Speaker Stack, made clicking sounds when he talked. The Zephyrians were known for being very smart and for working together like a hive of bees. The Saurians looked like large lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had thick skin and powerful muscles. Their leader, War Chief Gorth, had scars all over his body from many battles. The Saurians were known for being tough and never giving up in a fight. There were 9 other alien races at the table, each with their own strange appearance and special abilities. Some could breathe poison gas, others could see in complete darkness, and a few could live in the vacuum of space without any protection. Jake and his team sat in the 3 small chairs that had been placed at the table for humans. The chairs looked tiny next to the massive seats of the other aliens. Some of the aliens had to look down to see the humans, which made Jake feel even smaller. "Now that everyone is here," said General Vexthek in a deep voice, "we can begin discussing the Vex swarm problem." He spoke in the common galactic language that all the races used for meetings like this. "The Vex have destroyed 18 star systems in the past year. They consume everything in their path and use the resources to make more of themselves." War Chief Gorth stood up, his heavy body making the floor shake slightly. "The Vex are like a disease that spreads from world to world. They have no honor, no individual thought. They only know how to eat and multiply." Hive Speaker Stack's wings buzzed as he spoke. "Our intelligence shows that the Vex are planning a major attack on the core worlds. If they succeed, billions of beings will die." Jake raised his hand to speak. The room became quiet as all eyes turned to him. "On Earth, we have experience fighting enemies that outnumber us. We have tactics that might work against the Vex." General Vexthek made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans," he said, "you are small and weak. Your planet has no real predators, no challenges that would make you strong. What could you possibly know about real warfare?" "We have fought many wars on our world," Jake said calmly. "We have learned to adapt and find new ways to win when the odds are against us." War Chief Gorth's eyes glowed with amusement. "Your species has no claws, no thick skin, no poison. You cannot even breathe in space without machines. How can such weak creatures claim to be warriors?" Some of the other aliens at the table made sounds that Jake realized were laughter. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles together, and the Krillians drummed their four hands on the table. "Show us these human tactics," said Hive Speaker Stack. "Let us see what the softskins think they know about war." Jake activated his data pad and projected images into the air above the table. The images showed battles from human history. There were pictures of soldiers hiding in forests, using the land to their advantage. There were scenes of small groups of fighters defeating much larger armies by using surprise attacks and clever tricks. "This is called guerrilla warfare," Jake explained. "Instead of fighting the enemy head-on, you use hit-and-run tactics. You attack when they don't expect it, then disappear before they can fight back." General Vexthek's four arms crossed over his chest. "You call this warfare? This is cowardice. Real warriors face their enemies with honor. They do not hide like frightened animals." "We also use psychological warfare," Jake continued, showing more images. "We try to confuse the enemy, make them afraid, and break their will to fight." The room erupted in more laughter. War Chief Gorth pounded his fist on the table. "Warriors should not need to play mind games. Strength and courage are all that matter in battle." Jake felt his face getting hot with embarrassment, but he kept his voice calm. "These tactics have helped us survive on our world for thousands of years. They might work against the Vex." "The Vex are not some primitive tribe on your little planet," said General Vexthek. "They are a galactic threat that requires real military power. Your sneaking and hiding will not work against beings that can communicate instantly across vast distances." Hive Speaker Stack's wings buzzed louder. "Humans think too much about trickery. The Vex respond only to force. We must hit them harder. Then they hit us." The meeting continued for hours, with the alien races discussing their plans to fight the Vex. They talked about massive fleets of warships, powerful weapons that could destroy entire moons and armies of millions of soldiers. Each race wanted to prove that their way of fighting was the best. Jake tried several more times to contribute ideas, but each time he was dismissed or ignored. The aliens seemed to think that humans were too weak and too primitive to understand. Real warfare. Finally, General Vexthek stood up to announce the battle plan. "The Krillian fleet will lead the main attack on the Vex stronghold at Kepler 442b. The Zephyrians will provide air support, and the Saurians will establish defensive positions." He looked at Jake with what might have been pity. "The humans will be assigned to supply runs and medical support. You can help the real warriors by bringing them food and taking care of their wounded." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "We're willing to help however we can." "Good," said War Chief Gorth. "Leave the fighting to those who know how to do it properly." As the meeting ended, Jake and his team walked back through the corridors of Nexus Prime. The other aliens ignored them or looked at them with contempt. Jake could hear some of them still laughing about human military tactics. "That went well," Pete said sarcastically. "They'll learn," Jake replied quietly. "When the shooting starts, they'll learn what humans can really do." Amy looked worried. "Sir, what if they're right? What if our tactics really won't work against the Vex?" Jake smiled for the first time since the meeting started. "Amy, they have no idea what we're really bringing to this fight. They think they know everything about human warfare, but they haven't met our real secret weapon yet." Pete grinned. "You mean the dogs?" "I mean the dogs," Jake confirmed. "Let's see how much they laugh when they meet the war dogs." The human ship UFS Liberty drifted in space near the edge of the Nexus Prime system. It was much smaller than the alien warships, but it was home to Jake Morrison and his crew. The ship had been built for long missions far from Earth, and it carried everything the human military needed for this operation. Jake walked through the narrow corridors of the Liberty. The walls were painted white and covered with pipes and cables that kept the ship running. The air smelled like metal and recycled oxygen. It was not as fancy as the alien ships, but it was reliable and tough. He found Captain Lisa Brooks in the main computer room. She was sitting at a desk covered with screens and data pads. Lisa was the smartest person Jake knew when it came to military planning. She could look at a battle and figure out the best way to win it. What do you have for me, Lisa? Jake asked. Lisa looked up from her screens. She had been studying information about the planet where they would fight the Vex. Kepler 442b is a nightmare, sir. The whole planet is covered with crystal formations that the Vex use as hives. They have tunnels everywhere, like a giant ant colony. She showed Jake pictures of the planet on her main screen. The surface looked like it was made of dark glass with towers of crystal reaching up into the sky. Between the towers were deep valleys filled with organic-looking structures that pulsed with a sickly green light. The Vex breed their warrior drones in these hives, Lisa continued. Intelligence says there could be millions of them down there. The crystal formations make it hard for our sensors to see what's really happening underground. Jake studied the images. What about the terrain? Can our people move around safely? That's the problem, Lisa said. The gravity is lighter than Earth, but the crystals create a maze. There are tunnels everywhere, and the Vex can pop up anywhere. Traditional military tactics won't work well in that environment. Amy Carter entered the room carrying a cup of coffee. She looked tired from all the political meetings she had been attending. Sir, the alien commanders are planning their attack strategies. They want to use overwhelming force to crush the Vex. That's exactly what the Vex expect them to do, Jake said. The aliens think like soldiers. They see a problem and try to solve it with bigger guns and more troops. Pete Collins joined them in the computer room. He was carrying a thick folder full of battle reports. I've been reading about every fight the Vex have had with other species. They always adapt to whatever tactics are used against them. If you attack them the same way twice, they'll be ready for it. Jake nodded. That's why we need to do something completely different, something they've never seen before. Lisa turned to face Jake. Are you talking about the special unit? I think it's time, Jake said. Let's go meet our secret weapon. The 4 humans walked through the ship to a section that was off limits to most of the crew. Jake entered a code into a security panel and heavy doors slid open. Inside was a large room with thick walls and special air filters. The room was filled with the sound of barking and whining. Along the walls were dozens of kennels, each one holding a military working dog. The dogs were all different breeds and sizes, but they all looked alert and ready for action. Master Sergeant Ron Hayes was standing in the middle of the room with a large German Shepherd beside him. Ron was a tough man in his 40s who had spent his whole career working with military dogs. His face was weathered from years of outdoor training, and his hands were covered with small scars from handling animals. Commander Morrison, Ron said, with a salute. Welcome to the K-9 Special Operations Division. The German Shepherd next to Ron looked up at Jake with intelligent brown eyes. The dog was bigger than most of his breed, with thick black and tan fur and muscles that showed he was in perfect shape. A metal tag on his collar read, Duke. This is Duke, Ron said, patting the dog's head. He's my partner and the leader of our pack. Duke has been trained for combat operations in space environments. Jake knelt down to Duke's level. The dog looked at him calmly, not afraid or aggressive. Hello, Duke, Jake said softly. Duke's tail wagged once as if he was saying hello back. Amy looked around the room at all the dogs. How many do we have? 48 dogs total, Ron answered. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and some special breeds that have been genetically enhanced for space operations. Each dog has been paired with a human handler. Sergeant Kelly Murphy approached from the other side of the room. She was a young woman with short red hair and kind eyes. Next to her was a Belgian Malinois with golden fur and pointed ears. The dog moved with the grace of a natural athlete. This is Rex, Kelly said. He specialized in search and rescue operations. Rex can find a person buried under rubble from half a mile away. Rex looked up at the humans and tilted his head to one side, as if he was trying to understand what they were saying. His tail wagged slowly, and he made a soft whining sound. What makes these dogs special? Lisa asked. Ron smiled. Let me show you. He walked over to a large table covered with equipment. Each dog wears a special suit for space combat. He held up what looked like a small spacesuit made for a dog. These suits provide life support, protection from radiation, and enhanced communication systems. The suit was made of tough fabric with metal plates covering the most important areas. There were small rocket thrusters on the back and legs that would help the dog move in zero gravity. The helmet was clear so the dog could see clearly, but it had special electronics that would enhance the dog's already powerful senses. The dogs also wear sensor equipment, Kelly added. Their natural hearing and smell are already much better than any humans. With the electronic enhancement, they can detect things that our best computers can't find. Jake watched as Ron fitted Duke with one of the suits. The dog stood still and let the human put the equipment on him. Duke seemed to understand that. The suit was important, even though it looked strange. How do they fight? Pete asked. Ron led the group to another part of the room where there was a large training area. Duke, demonstrate attack formation Alpha. Duke immediately dropped low and moved forward in a crouch. His movements were completely silent, and he seemed to flow across the floor like a shadow. He moved to one side, then to the other, always staying low and using cover. The dogs can move through terrain that would slow down human soldiers, Ron explained. They can fit through small spaces, climb over obstacles, and move silently. In the crystal formations on Kepler 442b, they'll be able to go places that no human or alien could reach. Kelly called Rex over to her. Rex, show them tracking mode. Rex put his nose to the ground and began moving in a pattern. He sniffed the air and the floor, his whole body focused on finding something. After a few seconds, he went straight to a small object that had been hidden under a piece of equipment. He found a scent marker that I hid 3 hours ago, Kelly. Sod, the Vex use chemical signals to communicate. Our dogs can track those signals and follow them back to their source. Amy looked amazed. The aliens have no idea about any of this? They think dogs are just pets, Jake said. They don't understand that we've been working with dogs for thousands of years. Dogs and humans have evolved together. We understand each other in ways that go beyond simple training. Ron nodded. The bond between a handler and their dog is something special. We trust each other completely. In combat, that trust can mean the difference between life and death. Duke walked over to Jake and sat down next to him. The big dog looked up at the human commander with calm confidence. Jake could see intelligence in Duke's eyes and something else. Duke wanted to help. He wanted to be part of the mission. The Vex operate like a hive mind, Lisa said. They share information instantly across their entire species. But they've never encountered anything like this. Exactly, Jake said. They'll try to analyze our tactics and predict our moves. But dogs don't think like computers or hive minds. They think like individuals who have been trained to work as a team. Pete looked around the room at all the dogs. So these are our secret weapons? These are our partners, Jake corrected. And when the aliens see what dogs and humans can do together, they'll understand why we've survived on Earth for so long. Ron started preparing the dogs for departure. We'll be ready to deploy in 6 hours, sir. Every dog knows their job, and every handler is prepared for combat. Jake watched as the humans and dogs worked together to prepare their equipment. The dogs seemed to understand that something important was about to happen. They were alert and focused, but not nervous or afraid. The other species are about to learn something important, Jake said quietly. They're going to learn that the strongest weapons aren't always made of metal and energy. Sometimes the strongest weapons are made of loyalty and trust. Duke looked up at Jake and wagged his tail. The dog was ready for whatever came next. And Jake knew that with partners like these, the humans were ready too. The massive coalition fleet arrived at Kepler 442b after 3 days of travel through hyperspace. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Liberty and watched through the main screen as hundreds of alien warships took their positions around. The dark planet. The planet looked even worse than the intelligence reports had suggested. The entire surface was covered with twisted crystal formations that glowed with a sick green light. The crystals formed huge towers and deep valleys, creating a maze that stretched across all the continents. Between the crystal structures, Jake could see organic tubes and tunnels that pulsed like living things. "Sir, we're receiving communications from the alien fleet commanders," Amy Carter reported from her station. "They're beginning their attack in 30 minutes. Jake nodded but kept watching the planet. "What's our position in all this?" "The Coalition has assigned us to the rear supply area," P. Collins answered. "We're supposed to stay back and help with medical evacuation and equipment transport." Captain Lisa Brooks looked up from her tactical display. "The alien forces are massive, sir. The Krillians have brought over 200 warships. The Zephyrians have 1,000 fighter craft. The Saurians have enough ground troops to cover 3 continents." Jake could see the alien formations on his screen. The Krillian ships were arranged in perfect battle lines, like ancient warriors preparing for a traditional fight. The Zephyrian fighters moved in complex patterns that looked like a dance. The Saurian transport ships were heading straight for the planet's surface, carrying millions of soldiers. "They're going to attack exactly like the Vex expect them to," Jake said quietly. "Overwhelming force, traditional tactics, predictable movements." The first wave of attacks began with the Krillians. Their huge ships fired energy weapons that lit up the darkness of space. The beams hit the crystal formations on the planet's surface and caused massive explosions. Entire mountains of crystal were destroyed in seconds. "Look at that firepower," Pete said with admiration. "They're turning the whole planet into dust." But as the explosions cleared, Jake could see that the Vex hives were still there. The crystal formations had been damaged, but they were already growing back. The organic tubes were spreading across the destroyed areas like healing wounds. "The Vex are adapting," Lisa reported. "They're rebuilding faster than the Krillians can destroy them." The Zephyrian fighters swooped down toward the planet like a swarm of metal insects. Their weapons fired in perfect coordination, hitting targets all across the surface. But as they flew over the crystal valleys, new structures erupted from the ground. The Vex had built anti-aircraft weapons that looked like giant flowers made of bone and metal. "The Zephyrians are taking heavy losses," Amy said. 50 fighters down in the first minute." Jake watched as the graceful Zephyrian craft were shot down by weapons they had never seen before. The Vex were learning from each attack and creating new defenses instantly. The Saurian ground forces landed on 3 different continents. Their massive soldiers charged across the crystal plains toward the Vex hives. The Saurians were tough and fearless, and they seemed to be making progress at first, but then the real Vex defense began. The crystal formations were not just hives. They were traps. As the Saurian soldiers advanced, the ground beneath them opened up. Tunnels that had been hidden under the crystal surface revealed themselves, and Vex warriors poured out behind the alien forces. "The Saurians are surrounded," Lisa said. "They're cut off from their supply lines." Jake could see the battle unfolding on his tactical display. The Vex were not fighting like any enemy the aliens had faced before. They were not trying to win through strength or courage. They were using the planet itself as a weapon. The Vex warriors were smaller than most of the alien soldiers, but they moved with perfect coordination. They appeared from tunnels that the Coalition forces had not known existed. They attacked from above and below, from the front and behind. Every time the aliens thought they had found a safe position, more Vex would emerge from hidden passages. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from all the alien commanders," Amy reported. "General Vextech is requesting immediate assistance. His forces are trapped in the Crystal Canyons. War Chief Gorth says his troops are being hunted through the tunnels," Pete added. "They can't find their way out. Hive Speaker Stackus remaining. Fighters are being shot down faster than they can retreat," Lisa said. "The Vex have some kind of air defense system that tracks them through the crystal formations." Jake listened to the reports and felt a mixture of sadness and frustration. He had tried to warn the alien commanders that their traditional tactics would not work against the Vex, but they had been too proud to listen. "The Vex are using the planet like a living weapon," Jake said. "They've turned the entire surface into a trap. The aliens are fighting the battle exactly where and how the Vex want them to." The battle continued for hours, and it became clear that the coalition forces were losing badly. The Krillian ships kept firing at the crystal formations, but the Vex hives just kept rebuilding themselves. The Zephyrian fighters were almost completely destroyed. The Saurian ground forces were scattered and lost in the maze of tunnels. "Sir, General Vexthik is calling for you personally," Amy said. "He sounds desperate." Jake activated the communication system. General Vexthik's image appeared on the screen. The proud Krillian warrior looked tired and angry. His perfect uniform was torn, and there were scratches on his metal-like skin. "Commander Morrison," the general said, "my forces are trapped. The Vex have surrounded us with creatures that move through the crystal formations like they were made for this place. We need your help." Jake could hear the pain in the general's voice. This was the same alien who had laughed at human tactics just days before. Now he was asking for help from the species he had called weak and primitive. "We tried to tell you that traditional tactics wouldn't work," Jake said calmly. "The Vex don't fight like honorable warriors, they fight like predators." Yes, you were right," General Vexthik said impatiently. "But now is not the time for speeches. My soldiers are dying. Can you help us or not?" Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Amy was monitoring communications from the other alien forces. Pete was studying the tactical situation. Lisa was tracking the movements of Vex forces across the planet. All of them were waiting for his decision. "War Chief Gorth is calling too," Pete reported. "His ground forces are completely lost in the tunnel system. They can't find their way back to the surface." "Hive Speaker Stack is requesting emergency evacuation," Amy added. "The Vex have some kind of weapon that's jamming his fighters' navigation systems." Jake could see the entire battle situation on his main screen. The coalition forces were scattered across the planet, trapped in small groups, being hunted by an enemy that knew every tunnel and hiding place. The aliens had brought overwhelming firepower, but the Vex had turned the planet into a maze where firepower was useless. "The Vex are fighting smart," Jake said. "They're not trying to match the aliens' strength. They're using their advantages and avoiding their weaknesses." Lisa looked up from her console. "Sir, if we don't do something soon, the entire coalition force will be destroyed. The Vex will have won their biggest victory ever." Jake stood up from his command chair. He had been waiting for this moment since the meeting at Nexus Prime. The alien species had dismissed human capabilities, but now they needed what humans could offer. "Amy, open a channel to all coalition forces," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir." Jake's voice was transmitted to every alien ship and every trapped soldier on the planet below. "This is Commander Morrison of the Human Forces. We're coming to help you, but we're going to do this our way." General Vexthek's voice came back immediately. "Commander, we appreciate any assistance, but what can your small force do that our massive fleets could not?" Jake smiled for the first time since the battle began. "General, you're about to learn what humans mean when we talk about unconventional warfare. You're going to see our real secret weapon." He turned to his crew. "Contact Master Sergeant Hayes. Tell him it's time to release the dogs." Pete grinned. "Should I tell the alien commanders what we're planning?" "No," Jake said. "Let them be surprised. They wanted to see what humans could do in a real fight. Now they're going to find out." Jake looked at the planet on his screen. The Vex thought they had won. They had trapped the most powerful military forces in the galaxy and were systematically destroying them. But the Vex had never faced an enemy like the one that was about to be unleashed. "Take us in, Lisa," Jake ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy what war dogs can do." The human dropships launched from the UFS Liberty like silver arrows shooting toward the dark planet below. Each ship carried a small team of humans and their four-legged partners. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge as the first wave of his special forces headed into the crystal maze that had trapped the mighty alien armies. Master Sergeant Ron Hayes sat in the lead dropship with Duke beside him. The big German shepherd wore his special combat suit and looked calm despite the chaos happening around them. Through the ship's windows, Ron could see the crystal formations getting closer. The twisted towers looked like frozen lightning, and The valleys between them glowed with that sick green light. 2 minutes to drop zone, the pilot announced. Ron checked Duke's equipment one more time. The dog suit was working perfectly and all the sensors were active. Duke's enhanced hearing could already pick up sounds that the human ear could not detect. His nose was filtering through hundreds of different scents, learning the smell of this alien world. "Ready, boy?" Ron asked quietly. Duke looked up at his handler and wagged his tail once. The dog understood that something important was about to happen. He had been trained for this moment his whole life. The dropship landed in a crystal valley, where General Vexthek's forces had been trapped. The Krillian soldiers were huddled behind broken crystal formations, trying to hide from Vex warriors that kept appearing from hidden tunnels. The proud alien warriors looked confused and frightened. General Vexthek himself was crouched behind a large crystal boulder. His forearms held different weapons, but he kept looking around nervously. He had never fought an enemy that he could not see coming. "General," Ron said as he approached with Duke at his side, "we're here to help." General Vexthek looked down at the human and the dog. "This is your secret weapon." "A beast and its keeper?" "Just watch," Ron replied. Ron gave Duke a hand signal, and the dog immediately went to work. Duke put his nose to the ground and began moving in a pattern that seemed random to the aliens watching. But Ron knew exactly what Duke was doing. The dog was reading the story that Sense told about this place. Within seconds, Duke had found something. He moved toward a section of crystal wall that looked exactly like every other section. But Duke could smell something the others could not. He sat down and looked back at Ron. "There's a hidden tunnel entrance right there," Ron said. Pointing to where Duke was sitting, General Vexthek stared at the crystal wall. "I see nothing." Ron pulled out a small device and scanned the area where Duke had indicated. The scanner showed a hollow space behind the crystal. "Duke's nose is better than our best sensors. There's definitely something behind this wall." At that moment, the crystal wall exploded outward. 3 Vex warriors charged through the opening, their weapons ready to attack the trapped Krillian soldiers, but Duke was already moving. The big dog launched himself at the first Vex warrior with incredible speed. His enhanced suit allowed him to move faster than any normal animal could. Duke hit the alien creature and knocked it down before it could fire its weapon. The second Vex warrior turned to shoot at Duke, but Ron was ready. He fired his rifle and hit the creature center mass. The third Vex warrior tried to retreat back into the tunnel, but Duke was too fast. The dog caught the creature at the tunnel entrance and held it there until Ron could capture it. The whole fight had taken less than 30 seconds. The Krillian soldiers stood in shocked silence. They had been hiding from these creatures for hours, and a single dog had defeated 3 of them almost instantly. "How?" General Vexthek asked. "Duke knew they were coming before they broke through the wall," Ron explained. "He could smell them through the crystal. Dogs have been hunting with humans for thousands of years. They know how to track prey and predict where it will go." In another part of the planet, Sergeant Kelly Murphy and her partner Rex were helping War Chief Gorth's lost soldiers. The Saurian troops had been wandering through the tunnel system for hours, unable to find their way back to the surface. The tunnels all looked the same, and the Saurian soldiers were getting exhausted. "We have been walking in circles," War Chief Gorth said angrily. "These tunnels are like a maze with no exit." Kelly knelt down next to Rex and showed him a piece of cloth from one of the Saurian supply ships. "Rex, find home." Rex sniffed the cloth and immediately understood what Kelly wanted. He put his nose to the ground and began following a scent trail that was invisible to everyone else. The dog moved with confidence through the twisting tunnels, never hesitating about which direction to go. "Your animal knows the way out?" War Chief Gorth asked. "Rex can follow scent trails that are hours old," Kelly explained as they walked. "He's tracking the smell of your soldiers who came down here earlier. He's following their path backward to find the entrance." The Saurian soldiers followed Rex through tunnel after tunnel. Some of the passages were so narrow that the large aliens had to crawl. Others opened into vast chambers filled with Vex equipment. But Rex never lost the trail. After an hour of walking, Rex suddenly stopped and sat down. He looked back at Kelly and whined softly. "What is it, boy?" Kelly asked. Rex was staring at a section of tunnel wall that looked solid, but the dog's behavior told Kelly that something was wrong. She pulled out her scanner and checked the area. "There are Vex warriors waiting behind this wall," she whispered to War Chief Gorth. "It's an ambush." The Saurian leader looked at the wall with new respect. "Your animal detected an ambush that my soldiers could not see. Rex can hear their heartbeats through the crystal," Kelly said. "He knew they were there before we got close enough for them to attack." War Chief Gorth ordered his soldiers to prepare for battle. When the Vex warriors broke through the wall, the Saurians were ready for them. The ambush failed because Rex had detected it first. Back on the surface, other dog teams were working to rescue the scattered coalition forces. Each team consisted of one human handler and one specially trained dog. The dogs were doing things that amazed the alien soldiers who saw them. Some dogs were tracking Vex warriors through the crystal formations, following scent trails that led to hidden weapons caches. Other dogs were finding wounded alien soldiers who had been trapped under collapsed crystal structures. The dogs could hear the faint heartbeats and breathing of buried soldiers that electronic sensors had missed. Duke and Ron were moving through the deepest part of the crystal maze, following a scent trail that Duke had picked up. The dog was leading them toward something important, but Ron was not sure what it was. "What do you smell, boy?" Ron asked quietly. Duke stopped and looked back at his handler. The dog's body language told Ron that they were close to something dangerous. Duke's ears were forward and his muscles were tense. They came to the edge of a huge chamber carved into the crystal. Below them, Ron could see something that made his blood run cold. It was a Vex queen, much larger than any Vex warrior they had seen. The creature was surrounded by hundreds of smaller Vex who were building new weapons and armor. Ron activated his communication device. "Commander Morrison, this is Hayes. We found something big." Jake's voice came back immediately. "What?" "Do you see? Duke led us to a Vex queen," Ron reported. "She's in a chamber about 2 miles underground. There are hundreds of warriors with her. Can you get closer?" Ron looked at Duke. The dog was staring down at the Vex queen with intense focus. "Duke wants to go down there. He's not afraid of that thing." "The aliens have been looking for Vex command centers for months," Jake said. "If you can locate the queen, we might be able to end this battle." Ron and Duke carefully made their way down into the chamber. The dog moved silently through the crystal formations, avoiding the Vex guards with an almost supernatural ability. Duke seemed to know exactly where each enemy was located, even when they were hidden. As they got closer to the queen, something strange happened. The massive Vex creature turned toward them and made a loud shrieking sound. All the Vex warriors in the chamber stopped what they were doing and looked around in confusion. "She's trying to control Duke with her mind," Ron realized. The Vex used psychic powers to coordinate their attacks, but Duke was not affected by the queen's mental assault. The dog continued moving toward the target, ignoring the alien creature's attempts to control him. Duke's mind was focused only on his mission and his trust in his human partner. "That's impossible," came General Vex Thick's voice over the radio. "The Vex Queen's psychic powers can paralyze any thinking creature." "Duke doesn't think like you do," Ron said. "He thinks like a predator who's been trained to work with humans. Your computers and hive minds can't understand that." Duke reached the perfect position and sat down, looking back at Ron. The dog had marked the target, just as he had been trained to do. Ron activated his targeting beacon, and within seconds, missiles from the human ships above began hitting the chamber. The Vex Queen's death scream echoed through the crystal formations. All across the planet, Vex warriors stopped fighting and began retreating. Without their queen to coordinate their attacks, the hive mind was broken. "The Vex are falling back," came reports from all over the battlefield. "They're abandoning their positions." Jake's voice came over the radio to all the dog teams. "Outstanding work, everyone. The dogs have done what the biggest fleet in galactic history could not do." 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the representatives of 12 alien species gathered once again at Nexus Prime, but this time, the atmosphere in the great meeting hall was completely different. The aliens who had once laughed at Human military tactics now looked at Commander Jake Morrison with respect and curiosity. Jake walked into the meeting room with Duke at his side. The big German shepherd wore a special collar that marked him as a hero of the coalition forces. Behind them came Master Sergeant Ron Hayes, Sergeant Kelly Murphy with Rex, and several other dog teams that had played crucial roles in the victory. The alien representatives stood up as the humans entered. This was something that had never happened before. General Vexthek, his forearms crossed respectfully over his chest, bowed his head slightly as Jake passed by his seat. Commander Morrison, General Vexthek said in a voice that was much different from the mocking tone he had used weeks before, I owe you and your warriors an apology. I was wrong about human capabilities. Jake stopped and looked at the tall Krillian general. You fought bravely, General. Your soldiers showed courage even when they were trapped and outnumbered. But courage was not enough, General Vexthek replied. My warriors were defeated by an enemy we could not understand. Your dogs succeeded where our weapons and tactics failed. War Chief Gorth stood up from his massive chair. The Saurian leaders. Scarred face showed emotions that Jake had never seen before. Commander Morrison, your animal Rex saved the lives of 300 of my soldiers. Without him, we would have died lost in those tunnels. Kelly Murphy stepped forward with Rex beside her. Rex was just doing his job, War Chief. He's trained to find people who are lost. But how did he know where to go? War Chief Gorth asked. My soldiers have been walking in circles for hours. Our electronic maps were useless in those crystal formations. Rex followed scent trails, Kelly explained. He could smell where your soldiers had been even hours after they had passed through an area. Dogs have been tracking with humans for thousands of years. It's what they do naturally. Hive speaker Stack's wings buzzed as he spoke. Our intelligence networks have been analyzing the battle data. The Vex had sensors that could detect our ships from great distances. They had weapons that could track our fighters through the crystal formations, but they had no defense against your dogs. Jake nodded. The Vex operate like a computer network. They analyze patterns and predict behavior based on logic. But dogs don't think like computers. They think like hunters who have learned to work with humans. The Vex Queen tried to control Duke's mind, Ron added. She used the same psychic powers that had stopped other species from getting close to her. But Duke wasn't affected at all. General Vexthek leaned forward in his chair. How is that possible? The Vex Queen's mental attacks can paralyze any intelligent creature. Duke is intelligent, Jake said, but not in the way you think of intelligence. He doesn't have complex thoughts about strategy or politics. He thinks about his pack, his mission, and his trust in his human partner. The Vex Queen couldn't understand that kind of thinking. Duke looked up at Jake and wagged his tail once. The dog had no idea that he had changed the course of galactic history. To him, the battle had been another successful hunt with his pack. Leader, a new voice spoke from across the room. It belonged to Ambassador Krell of the Nixarian Federation, a species that had not participated in the battle. The Nixarian Council has been watching these events with great interest. We have never seen such a partnership between two different species. Jake looked at the tall, thin alien. The Nixarians were known for being scholars and philosophers rather than warriors. Dogs and humans evolved together on Earth. We've been partners for over 30,000 years. This partnership, Ambassador Krell continued, it is not based on technology or genetic modification. It is based on mutual trust and understanding. That's exactly right, Jake said. We don't control the dogs, and they don't control us. We work together because we choose to. Rex walked over to War Chief Gorth and sat down beside the massive Saurian's chair. The dog looked up at the alien warrior with friendly eyes. War Chief Gorth carefully reached down and patted Rex's head with one of his clawed hands. This animal saved my life, War Chief Gorth said quietly. He led me through dangers that I could not see. He protected me when I was helpless. Rex likes you, Kelly said with a smile. Dogs are good judges of character. Hive speaker Stack's wings stopped buzzing. The Zephyrian Collective would like to understand this partnership better. Perhaps we could learn to work with creatures from our own world in similar ways. We'd be happy to help, Jake said. The bond between humans and dogs is special, but the principles can be applied to other species relationships. General Vexthek stood up and walked over to Duke, a proud Krillian warrior, who had once called dogs primitive beasts, knelt down to the dog's level. "May I?" he asked Jake. Jake nodded. General Vexthek carefully extended one of his four hands toward Duke. The dog sniffed the alien's hand and then allowed the general to pet his fur. "He is not afraid of me," General Vexthek said with wonder. "Even though I am much larger and stronger than he is." "Duke doesn't judge people by their size or strength," Ron explained. "He judges them by their intentions and their actions. He knows you're not a threat." "This is remarkable," General Vexthek said. "On my world, we measure worth by combat ability and physical power. But this creature values something different. Dogs value loyalty, courage, and kindness," Jake said. "They judge character, not strength." Ambassador Krell spoke again. "The Nixarian Council has a proposal. We would like to establish a new military academy where species from across the galaxy can learn these unconventional tactics. We believe that the human-dog partnership model could revolutionize how we think about warfare and cooperation." Jake looked around the room at all the alien representatives. They were all watching him with attention and respect. "We would be honored to participate in such a program." "There is one more thing," General Vexthek said. "The Galactic Defense Coalition has voted to promote you to the rank of general. You will be in charge of all special operations for the coalition forces." Jake felt surprised by the honor. "I accept the promotion, but I have one condition." "What is that?" War Chief Gorth asked. "Master Sergeant Hayes and the K-9 Division must be given equal authority in all special operations. The dogs aren't just tools or weapons, they're partners and soldiers." Ron Hayes stepped forward. "Sir, we would be honored to serve under your command." "Not under my command," Jake corrected. "With my command. We're all part of the same team." Duke stood up and walked to the center of the room. All the alien representatives watched as the big dog sat down and looked around at each of them. His tail wagged slowly and his expression was calm and friendly. "I think Duke approves of this arrangement," Jake said with a smile. War Chief Gorth laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "I believe you are right, General Morrison." Over the following months, teams of human handlers and their dogs began working with alien forces throughout the galaxy. The dogs helped train alien soldiers in tracking, detection, and unconventional tactics. More importantly, they taught the aliens about the value of trust and partnership. The Krillians learned to work with creatures from their own world that had keen senses and loyal hearts. The Zephyrians discovered that some of their domestic animals could be trained for military operations. The Saurians found that cooperation could be more effective than simple strength. The Vex swarm was eventually defeated completely, not through overwhelming firepower, but through the kind of creative thinking and adaptive tactics that humans and dogs had perfected together over thousands of years. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Coalition Academy, watching as alien cadets trained with their newly adopted animal partners. Duke sat beside him, now wearing the insignia of a decorated war hero. "You know what's funny, Duke?" Jake said to his four-legged friend. "They thought we were the primitive ones. They couldn't understand that sometimes the oldest partnerships are the strongest ones." Duke looked up at Jake and wagged his tail. The dog didn't care about galactic politics or military theory. He only cared that his human pack leader was happy, and that they were still together. In the training yard below, a young Krillian soldier was learning to work with a creature from his own world. The alien was patient and gentle, following the example that human handlers had set. The animal responded with trust and enthusiasm. "Look at that," Jake said to Duke. "They're learning what we've always known. The best weapons aren't made of metal or energy. They're made of friendship and trust." Duke barked once in agreement. Then he settled down next to Jake to watch the training continue. The galaxy had learned an important lesson, and it had learned it from the most unlikely teachers of all. a group of humans and their dogs who had refused to be underestimated. The war dogs had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the smallest acts of loyalty and love. And the galaxy would never forget that lesson.